I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:31. Any adjustments to the agenda?
I do. I have one, and it is under new business. It's under section A. It's a bullet under middle school basketball boys. It would be volunteer Josh McFarland.
It's not a paid position. Yes, it does. It's not a paid position, it's a volunteer position. The 365 days pertains to a paid position in which you voted to approve a contract.
That's it.
Motion to accept the board meeting agenda as presented and adjusted. We get a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Any recognitions this evening, Mr. Downing?
No.
Consideration of the regular board meeting minutes, October 26, 2021.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? We have no consent agenda items this evening. Presentation Siemens report.
Wow.
That must be you.
So I got So I got the report November 1st. We did meet a performance contract agreement for the first annual period, which was the first year. They guaranteed $59,147 savings in that period. Our savings amounted to $59,465, which was $318 in our favor, better than what the contract guaranteed.
Can I ask a quick question about that? Does it break down in the areas in which it's saving, whether it's electricity or heat? Because I would have bet being some remote, some Wednesdays off, and fewer students, that we should have saved some money even if we didn't do anything. So I'd be interested to see where their savings was in each area.
Yeah, my plan is to go over everything at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting. It's something page.
Well, I'm sure it's wordy, and yeah, it can't be just a simple bullet. You save 4,000 in electricity.
There's a lot to it.
3,000 in heat. And
yeah. They were. My guess is they were shocked that it was so low.
Yeah, and my rationale is, if we had had a normal school year, where we went to school all year long, that we probably wouldn't have achieved the savings that we did, because we'd have consumed more electricity and we'd have used more heat. So it would be really curious to see what happens on a full year of school attendance.
Well, we can go over that at the Building and Grounds Committee. So there's a lot of things that aren't in this report that I have to add to it.
So we'll be getting that at the Buildings and Ground. Is there any way to fire that off in an email for Buildings and Ground to read prior to? Thanks. Yeah, we do need to make a date. Any questions for Russ? We'll see you. There'll be more badgering at Buildings and Grounds. Guaranteed. Public participation. I did not grab the list. Is there anybody that wishes to speak from the public? Report from the superintendent.
I do have a couple of points. Today, received from Drummond Wood a client advisory. And what that involves is what's called the Emergency Temporary Standard, which they're using the acronym ETS. It's requiring covered employers throughout the United States to adopt a policy ensuring their employees are vaccinated against COVID-19 or tested on a weekly basis. And that's for employees covered by this mandate, includes employees with 100 or more, which would include RSU 20. And the reason why schools are there is that, just so I can read this correctly, as well as the public sector, workers employed by state and local governments in states or territories with OSHA state plans. Because Maine does have an OSHA state plan, the ETS will apply to public employers in the state with more than 100 employees. Schools should be aware that the Maine Department of Labor has the authority to adopt stricter standards than the ETS requires. And the Maine Department of Labor will be required to announce in the next 2 weeks whether it will adopt the ETS or a different set of standards. So there's also note that right now in the Fifth Circuit, there is a temporary stay of the ETS. That should be decided soon, which is involving nationwide ramifications. And that as soon as we have more information, we will be passing this on because the district would then have to develop a written vaccination policy in which the school will have administrative procedures to implement the ETS. So in short, that would mean that staff would either need to be vaccinated or be weekly tested. And those that are not vaccinated would be required to wear a mask. So I just want to let you know that that came through today, and we'll have more information as it comes through.
So is this their way of telling us that if we do not follow this so-called rule, that we will not receive any state funding?
This is a federal regulation.
So, okay, so we're not going to get any federal funding if we do not.
Denise, I do not know the answer to
Okay.
that because this is what we got today. A couple other points. Again, information that we're receiving as we sit here tonight regarding the winter season, indoor sports, and performing arts guidance. The regional presidents, the superintendents have been meeting, as has folks at the Maine Principals Association, and that the guidance is just now starting to come forth. Josh, Peter, and I will be meeting on Monday once we have the information in hand, and I'll give you how fluid it is. Yesterday, the Maine Principals Association requires all wrestlers to be vaccinated. That was been questioned today, not by us because we do not have wrestling, but the MPA is now meeting again tomorrow to make determinations on that. So again, this is a fluid information, and that we'll be bringing information back to the board so that you can see what is happening. I wish I could give you a set answer right now, but I do not have one. I will tell you this, that one of the methods that the superintendents have asked the Maine Principals Association is really a simple question. And that is, come tournament time, what will be the requirements of the basketball teams? Will the student athletes be allowed to play without masks? Will they be required to wear masks? Therefore, we as schools would like to know so our kids can practice and play according to what the standards are going to be if they make the tournament, which will probably be an open tournament because that's the way things have been working the last few years. So we're waiting on that answer. And then ironically, today, the Cross Center up in Bangor just put out a statement that all people coming into the auditorium, I still call it the auditorium, are going to be required to wear masks. So there again, we're caught in a situation where, you know, we tell our student athletes, you know, what we're going to have to do. Josh and I have spoken. We are going to have it open for fans, but it's in all likelihood fans will need to be masked. But we will get back to you on that as well. I wish I had a definitive answer. Two other points. One is I, on behalf of RSU 20, want to wish Leanna Seekins the very best in her retirement, which came upon us all very suddenly. Leanna provided over 20 years of service to both RSU 20 and the SAD 56. We wish Leanna all the best. We're praying for her that her health improves and that she enjoys retirement. And then the last thing I have is some committee meeting dates. Tomorrow night, we have our district negotiation committee, which is Tony and Denise, Deanna, and Mike Busher from Drummond Woodsum. We're meeting at 6 at central office. On Monday, the 15th of November, the PBE and the district negotiation team will sit down at 6 o'clock to begin negotiations. On Monday, no, Monday, the 15th. We're meeting tomorrow as a district, just us. And then Monday, we're meeting with them. But Wednesday wasn't available. Then on the 29th, I've scheduled a building and grounds committee. That is a Monday, but we will start that at 6:30. And then on December 6th, which is the following Monday, will be the policy committee. And that will meet at 6 at the central office. And that's what I have to report.
Any questions? So I sent an email with that. Unfortunately, it's we're being controlled by one person, their availability, not the majority. Moving on, policy committee report. I don't believe they've met, or have they? You have. Great.
So we met last night and we reviewed a couple of policies that were recommended by other board members. And the first one was the student dress code. And we have asked for information to come from the student council in regard to that policy. We don't currently have a student dress policy, so we wanted to look at that as an option and get input from student council, as well as maybe the 5th grade at SES. And we also want some staff input on that. We've got a package of samples that will be coming around to you so that you can facilitate that discussion at your schools. We also took a look at the staff dress code policy. and that's all we did. We just took a look at it and discussed some different options there, but really made no decision, decided to make no changes. And we also looked at some sample social media policies in regard to staff use. And again, we're going to review that next time because we didn't really get into it. We just had a sample policy to look at, and it was pretty involved, so we decided to table that for next meeting. We will look at policy GSAA at our next meeting, Mr. Downing, and I believe that is the policy that has to do with outside transportation. Is that correct? So we had voted several meetings ago not to allow community groups to use school transportation, but we actually do have a policy on that. So we're going to review that next meeting, and our plan is we're going through the handbook, reviewing the policies. There are several outdated policies dating back to 2009. Many of them may not need to be updated, but at least the heading should be updated. So we're looking at that, and we're taking it section by section, and we ask that anybody who has suggestions or recommendations bring those to us so we can take a look at them. We'll specifically be looking at section A at our next meeting, deciding which of those, if any, need to be brought to a meeting and discussed, but we'll take them in whatever order you bring them to us.
Any questions for policy committee? Thank you. Finance committee met this evening, all about 3.5 minutes. All in standing good order towns are up to date with their payments. Moving on to 11, consideration of the, yeah, I'm tired of reading this. Any changes from the DOE?
There are, in the standard operating procedure, there are minor updates. And what I did was I made a copy of.
While you're looking, have you ever received any comments or response to the email you sent DOE? Shocker.
The updates, as the title and priority notice said, they're minor updates to the SOP. I gave you the board this so you can go to the SOP. And the changes you'll find are on page 3. It talks about, I'll read them for everybody else, that fully vaccinated close contacts do not need to quarantine unless they themselves become symptomatic. However, fully vaccinated close contacts should be tested immediately if they develop any symptoms and/or 5 to 7 days following exposure, and wear a mask until they receive a negative test result. And then the other change was that the confirmation of a positive antigen test is not required if the antigen test is conducted on an individual with a known exposure to a positive case or with a linked positive PCR pool test. So that second one is, and really the first one too, fall into the nurse category of following up on positive cases. That's the only change. There's been no other changes.
So Chris, did that say they require or recommend a test immediately or 5 to 7 days? That change?
It does not have, should be.
So it's a recommendation, not a, okay.
But those are the only changes that have come down.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on. New business. Anybody wish to take these all at once, or shall we do them one at a time? Anybody object?
No, not at this point. No
Approval,
recommendation.
approval of following winter coaches, middle school and high school, and volunteers. I'll throw that in there, in my motion. High school boys basketball, Troy Alley. High school boys basketball volunteer, R.J. Robinson. High school girls basketball, Melvin Grant. High school girls basketball volunteer, Brianna Ellis. Middle school basketball boys, Jeff Golder. Middle school basketball girls, undecided, to be determined. And middle school basketball boys volunteer, Josh McCloud. Those in the form of a motion, if I could get a second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Anybody object to taking these all at once as well? Approval of the following support staff nominations. Hannah Harding Palmer, Special Ed Tech 3 Resource Room, SDMS, and Jefferson Davis, SPED Ed Tech 1, Searsport District High School. All those in favor? Thank you. Date, time of next board meeting is December 14th. It is tentatively going to be the superintendent's evaluation, but if we have agenda items or hirings that we must approve, it'll be a regular board meeting, and then we'll go into executive session, like we always do. Finance will be at 6 o'clock on the 14th. And barring any unknown circumstances, there will be no second meeting in the month of December, as well as that is a vacation week. Motion to adjourn. Wait a second. I think we know the vote. 6:53.